When most people think of Alaska, they imagine a frozen wasteland. They picture endless snow, grizzly bears, dog sleds, and maybe a few lonely fishermen battling the harsh Arctic winds. They see it as America's last frontier, a place of rugged wilderness and extreme isolation, a vast territory that is more of a national park than a geopolitical powerhouse. They think of Sarah Palin. They think of the Northern Lights. They think of a place where civilization ends and nature takes over completely. But this perception, this romantic and naive understanding of the 49th state, is dangerously outdated and intentionally misleading. Because beneath the ice and snow, beneath the seemingly barren tundra and the treacherous waters of the Bering Strait, lies a treasure trove of resources that is quietly rewriting the rules of global power. Alaska is not just a state. It is a fortress. It is a vault. It is the single most valuable piece of real estate on the planet, and almost nobody is talking about why. Consider this for a moment. The United States of America, the world's largest economy and its most powerful military, is sitting on a gold mine that rivals the oil fields of the Middle East, the rare earth deposits of China, and the strategic choke points of the South China Sea, all rolled into one frozen peninsula that it purchased for a paltry sum of $7.2 million back in 1867. That purchase, widely mocked at the time as Seward's Folly, after the Secretary of State who orchestrated the deal, is now looking like the greatest real estate transaction in human history. Alaska holds more oil than the entire Bakken Formation, enough natural gas to power the United States for decades, and critical minerals that are essential for every smartphone, every electric vehicle, and every advanced military system on Earth. But that is only the beginning of the story, because Alaska's true value does not just lie in what sits beneath its soil, but in where it sits on the map. Alaska is the geographical key to the Arctic, a region that is melting at an unprecedented rate due to climate change, revealing new shipping routes and untapped resources that have been locked beneath the ice for millennia. As the ice recedes, the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route are becoming viable commercial corridors, bypassing the Suez and Panama Canals and cutting shipping times between Asia and Europe by nearly 40%. Whoever controls the Arctic controls the global trade routes of the future. And right now, the United States, through Alaska, has a commanding position at the top of the world, sharing a maritime border with Russia and sitting just a few miles from the Asian continent. This is not just about oil. This is not just about gas. This is about the entire future of global commerce, military strategy, and geopolitical dominance, all centered on a place that most Americans have never visited and most of the world has long ignored. The silence around Alaska's rising significance is not accidental. It is a strategic silence, maintained by those who understand that the moment the world wakes up to Alaska's true value, the race for control will begin in earnest. To fully grasp why Alaska is today's most undervalued asset, we must first travel back in time to an era when the world was still largely unexplored and the Arctic was considered a frozen graveyard for ambitious explorers. The indigenous peoples of Alaska, the Inuit, the Yupik, the Aleut, and the Athabascans, had lived on this harsh land for thousands of years before any European laid eyes on it. They had mastered the art of survival in temperatures that plunged to 60 degrees below zero, thriving in a world that would have killed anyone from the warmer latitudes in a matter of hours. Their culture, their knowledge, and their resilience were the first threads in the rich tapestry of Alaskan history, but they were also the first victims of the coming wave of colonial ambition that would sweep across the north. The Russians were the first Europeans to establish a serious foothold in Alaska, driven by the insatiable European appetite for sea otter pelts, which were worth more than gold in the markets of China and Europe. For decades, Russian fur traders, backed by the Russian-American Company, exploited the native populations and the abundant wildlife, building a string of settlements along the coast that extended as far south as California. But by the mid-19th century, the fur trade had collapsed, and Russia found itself financially strained and militarily vulnerable, facing the prospect of losing Alaska to its great rival, the British Empire. Rather than see their hard-won territory fall into the hands of the British, the Russians made a fateful decision to sell it to the United States, a rising power that was eager to expand its continental reach, but had no idea what it was actually buying. In 1867, the American Secretary of State, William H. Seward, negotiated the purchase of Alaska for 2 cents an acre, a total of $7.2 million, a sum that seemed exorbitant to a nation still recovering from the Civil War. The press lambasted him, calling the frozen expanse Seward's icebox in Russia, ridiculing the purchase as a colossal waste of taxpayer money. Few Americans understood the strategic importance of the territory, and even fewer could predict the discovery of gold in the Klondike in 1896, which triggered a stampede of prospectors and finally put Alaska on the map as a land of immense potential. But the gold rush, while dramatic and transformative, was merely a prelude to the real wealth hidden beneath the surface, wealth that will remain buried for decades until technology and geopolitics finally caught up with geography. The real power of Alaska was not fully revealed until the discovery of the Prudhoe Bay oil field in 1968, the largest oil field ever discovered in North America. This single geological formation, buried beneath the Arctic tundra, contained an estimated 25 billion barrels of recoverable oil, instantly transforming the United States into a global energy superpower and reducing its dependence on volatile Middle Eastern oil. The construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, an 800-mile engineering marvel that carries oil from the North Slope to the ice-free Port Valdez, was a monumental achievement that unlocked Alaska's hidden potential and changed the dynamics of global energy markets forever. But while oil was the first crown jewel to be unearthed, it was far from the last. Alaska is now understood to be home to some of the largest untapped reserves of natural gas on the planet, estimated at over 100 trillion cubic feet, enough to supply the entire United States for more than a decade. This gas, combined with the massive coal deposits, the rich fisheries that produce 50% of the nation's seafood, and the vast timberlands, makes Alaska an economic powerhouse that rivals entire countries. Yet despite these remarkable statistics, the most valuable secrets of Alaska are not hydrocarbons or cod or timber. They are the critical minerals that are essential for the 21st century's technological revolution. Alaska holds vast deposits of zinc, lead, copper, silver, and gold, but more importantly, it is rich in rare earth elements like scandium, gallium, and palladium, which are the building blocks of semiconductors, aerospace alloys, and green energy technologies. The United States is currently almost entirely dependent on China for its supply of these critical minerals, a dependency that has become a national security vulnerability as tensions between the two superpowers continue to escalate. Alaska, with its vast and largely untapped mineral wealth, offers America a path to strategic independence, a way to break free from the stranglehold of foreign supply chains, and secure the materials needed for its future economic and military dominance. The Pentagon has quietly identified Alaska as a strategic priority, and major mining companies are pouring billions into exploration and development, recognizing that the frozen ground holds the keys to the next century. But this resource wealth is not only about economics. It is about survival, sovereignty, and the ability to project power across the globe without relying on the goodwill of rivals. The value of Alaska extends far beyond its borders, rippling outward across the globe and affecting the security and prosperity of nations on every continent. The Arctic, once considered a frozen, forgotten corner of the world, is now the stage for a new great game, a competition for dominance between the United States, Russia, China, and other regional powers. As the ice melts at an accelerating rate, new shipping routes are opening up, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route, significantly reducing travel times and bypassing the traditional choke points that have defined global trade for centuries. These new routes are a game changer, potentially saving shippers millions of dollars in fuel and transit fees, and reshaping the global economy in ways that are only beginning to be understood. For Russia, the Northern Sea Route is a lifeline, offering a direct path from Europe to Asia along its vast Arctic coast, a route that has been aggressively militarizing and fortifying for years. China, not even an Arctic nation, has declared itself a near-Arctic state and is investing heavily in infrastructure and research in the region, eager to secure a stake in the emerging Arctic economy. For the United States, Alaska is a linchpin of its Arctic strategy, home to the only major American military installations above the Arctic Circle and the critical infrastructure needed to monitor and respond to threats in the region. The implications for a global military balance are enormous, with Alaska serving as a frontline state in the event of any conflict between the great powers, a sentinel standing guard over the top of the world. But the ripple effects of Alaska's value are not just geopolitical. They are deeply personal and immediate for ordinary people around the globe. Every fluctuation in global energy prices, every shift in shipping costs, every disruption in the supply chain of rare earth minerals resonates from the frozen plains of Alaska to the bustling markets of Europe, Asia, and beyond. The price you pay for gasoline, the cost of manufacturing a smartphone, the availability of advanced medical equipment. All of these are connected to the resource flows emanating from Alaska and the strategic decisions made in Washington about how to manage and exploit this asset. The world is utterly dependent on the resources that Alaska holds, and the competition for control over these resources is intensifying with each passing year, making the frozen state not just an asset, but a potential point of global conflict. Despite its immense value, Alaska's future is not guaranteed, and the challenges it faces are as formidable as the opportunities it presents. Climate change, the very force that is unlocking the Arctic's potential, is also actively destroying the infrastructure that supports it. The permafrost that underpins roads, pipeline, and military bases is melting, causing the ground to buckle and sink, requiring billions of dollars in repairs and adaptation. Coastal communities are facing erosion and flooding as sea levels rise, threatening centuries-old indigenous villages and critical economic hubs. The environmental risks of extracting resources in such a fragile ecosystem are immense, and a single oil spill or mining accident could devastate the pristine wilderness and the rich fisheries that are the lifeblood of the region. There is also a growing tension between the need for economic development and the desire to preserve Alaska's unique wilderness and the traditional way of life of its indigenous peoples. The pursuit of the quickest profits often comes into conflict with the long-term sustainability of the environment and the culture, creating a complex web of political, social, and ethical dilemmas that defy easy solutions. The Alaskan government and the federal government are locked in debates over drilling rights, land use, and conservation, debates that are only becoming more intense as the value of the resources becomes more apparent and the pressure to extract them increases. And then there's the geopolitical pivot. Russia is actively challenging American dominance in the Arctic, establishing new military bases, and deploying advanced weaponry in the region. China, while geographically distant, is expanding its influence through economic investments and research partnerships, seeking to erode American hegemony. The United States, with Alaska as its primary outpost, is scrambling to catch up, investing in new icebreakers, upgrading its military installations, and reasserting its claim to Arctic leadership. The coming decade will be pivotal, a period that will determine whether Alaska becomes a new center of global prosperity or the flashpoint for a catastrophic conflict that can engulf the entire northern hemisphere. So what does the future hold for Alaska and the world? Two distinct paths lie ahead, and the choice will define the course of the 21st century. In the first path, the United States recognizes the immense value of Alaska and invests aggressively in its development. The gas pipelines are built, connecting Alaska's vast reserves to the continental United States and to global markets. The mining industry expands in a responsible and sustainable manner, producing the critical minerals needed for the green energy transition and breaking the Chinese monopoly. The military presence is bolstered, ensuring that the United States remains a dominant power in the Arctic, protecting the shipping lanes and the resources from hostile competitors. The indigenous communities are empowered and the environment is protected, creating a model of sustainable development that balances economic prosperity with ecological preservation. In this future, Alaska becomes America's greatest asset, a source of wealth and security that will sustain the nation for centuries to come. In the second path, the challenges prove insurmountable. The climate crisis accelerates, causing catastrophic damage to infrastructure and creating a humanitarian crisis as communities are displaced. The competition for resources spirals out of control, leading to military confrontations in the Arctic and a new Cold War that destabilizes the entire globe. The short-term extraction of resources proceeds without regard for the environment, leading to an ecological catastrophe that destroys the fisheries and poisons the land for generations. The indigenous cultures are marginalized and their rights trampled as the rush for profit overwhelms all other considerations. In this future, Alaska becomes not a blessing but a curse, a source of conflict, suffering, and environmental ruin that harms the world instead of helping it. The trajectory is not fixed, and the outcome is not predetermined. It will be decided by the choices we make today, by the priorities we set, by the leaders we elect, and by the values we hold dear. The world has only recently begun to realize the true value of Alaska, and the scramble for its resources is already underway. But who will win this race? Will it be a race to prosperity or a race to destruction? The map never lies, and Alaska is clearly drawn upon it, a vast and promising territory that holds a key to the future. We just saw how Alaska has become the most valuable piece of real estate on Earth. But there's one nation quietly positioning itself to challenge American dominance in the Arctic. That is the next journey. Which future do you believe? Comment Future 1 or Future 2, and subscribe to Atlas Beyond so you never miss the next journey.